Today we are here in pretty much sunny and warm Gulfport, Florida, to interview Rebecca Trammell, who is the director of the Homer and Dolly Hand Law Library and the director of electronic education and professor of law at Stetson University. Lots of titles.
You got it. Lots
yeah.
of titles means lots of work.
Good. Could we talk about how you sort of got qualified for all of this, starting way back at the beginning of your life when you were young and perhaps today?
Actually, because I have thought about it a little bit in response to this opportunity. I grew up in Denver, and when I was 15 years old, I got my very first library job, and it was a real job. I worked 15 hours a week at a branch of the Denver Public Library System, DPL, and worked there until I graduated from high school. Same little branch library. After I graduated from high school, they continued me for summers because I went away to school. I actually attended what was then a women's college in St. Charles, Missouri. It's now Lindenwood University. It's co-ed, much bigger deal than it was then. But I went away to college, but I continued to work for DPL during the summers on something they called their flying squad, which means that they sent me to different branches, to different locations to fill in for vacations. And so during those summers, I had a chance to work bookmobile. I had a chance to work storefront, and I had a chance to work at the main library in the children's department and at some of their other branches across the city. I loved libraries. While I was away at school, I worked in the college library. I staffed it on Sunday nights and a couple of days during the week for tuition reimbursement. And I have always loved libraries. And so this was just terrific. Then got married, kids, that kind of thing. And I got a job. At that point I was in Illinois. I got a job as a clerk in a very small, little tiny library. And I realized that I really did want to continue in libraries. So I got my master's in library science at what was then Rosary University.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, it's now Dominican.
Yes.
It was Rosary College, excuse me, and now it's Dominican University. So I got my library degree at Rosary College, and then got my first professional job as a children's librarian. I can tell you, I can do some of the best story times you've ever heard in your life. I did tell and draw stories. I did it all, and I loved it. I had a great time. I really did. It was terrific. And then I moved into a position as a library director for a very small little community library. And it was a storefront library. And it was okay. But the air conditioning didn't. We were renting the space. The air conditioning didn't work. It kept going out. It was hot. It was kind of miserable. It was just a little storefront. So I looked around, and there was a building on prime corner property. It was a church. And they were relocating, and they wanted to sell the building. And it turned out that the steeple for this church was not a steeple, but kind of a pillar in front of the church, and they were going to take it with them. And they wanted to sell it to some kind of not-for-profit or educational institution or something like that. So I talked to them, and they came up with a really great price. I talked to the bank in the community, and they agreed to do a loan with enough money to renovate the building. And I talked to the city, and they liked it. And so we had a great deal until the attorneys got into the act. You got it. The city had an attorney, the bank had an attorney, the church had an attorney. The only group in this sale that didn't have an attorney was the little library. And so as a result of the attorneys working on the deal, it cost the library an extra $4,000 And it took an extra 6 months to close the deal. And I decided I was going to go to law school because I was never going to be in the position where I was at the mercy of what I felt to be the attorneys. I'm serious.
You become one of them, so you knew what they were up to.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so I went to DePaul in Chicago. I did my first year at DePaul, and then I transferred back to the University of Denver. And I still call to this day Denver home. So I transferred back to the University of Denver, finished my law degree, and then did a couple of other odds and ends along the way, kids and that kind of thing, and got my very first professional law library position at Northern Illinois University. Because while I was in law school, I discovered law librarians. I learned that there were such things. And I loved law school. I really did. I loved it. I thought it was wonderful because you got to read a lot. And I just thought that was awesome. And you got to do research, which I also thought was awesome. And so what I did was I realized that I could put those two things together. And after I transferred to the University of Denver, I was ready to do some kind of a clerking job. And an attorney in Denver advertised at DU for somebody to do legal research. So 2 of us applied for the job, and he gave us each research projects to do. And he was paying us the munificent sum of $6 an hour to do this, and don't go over 11 hours, and write up your research and bring it to me. Well, I loved it. I took my research, he hired the other person, but I suddenly realized this is really pretty cool. So I actually started my own legal research business while I was in law school. I worked for solo practitioners or small law firms that couldn't afford to hire a full-time or a part-time clerk, but they could afford the contract jobs. And it was really kind of neat because they thought that that library degree that I had, that master's in library science, meant I really could do research. It didn't really mean that. Because there's such a difference between doing legal research and doing what you learn in library school. But I let them think that. And I have to say that that was the greatest thing that could have happened to me. Because what I learned during about a year and a half before I graduated, what I learned was the kind of research that attorneys do when they're practicing law. Not necessarily what we teach in law school, but what they had to do to make a living. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And then, as I said, I got my first profession back to Illinois. Got my first professional position at Northern Illinois University, and Blair Kaufman was the director at Northern Illinois.
Blair is a great guy.
Oh, yes.
I remember when he was there.
Yes.
I was a ABA inspector for them
Were
one time.
you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just when Blair came. I was the previous year. They were between librarians.
That's right.
And then I was repeated. They had the next year they had a visit as well. And Blair had arrived.
Yes.
And I think Lynn Strickland was
Yes.
the dean.
Yes.
Wonderful people.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. It was funny because Blair then was my first director, and he's been a mentor for me ever since. So he hired me, and then he left a few months later to go to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, yeah.
Yeah, that happens to me a lot. I don't think it's personal. No.
No, I don't think so
It's
either.
not.
But it's an opportunity.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's one that he couldn't pass up. But
And for you too.
It was.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Northern Illinois. I learned a lot. I met great people that I still stay in touch with. John Austin was the other reference librarian that really kind of helped me learn the ropes, if you will. And he's now the director at Northern. And it was a great place to work. But upward and onward, as they say.
Yeah.
So the next position was the associate director at the University of Nebraska,
All right.
with Sally Wise as the director. And again, I'm lucky in the people that I've worked for and the people that I've worked with, because I have learned so much from all of them.
Well, Sally is sort of a kind of a neighbor down here in Florida.
Yes,
I mean,
she
she's
is.
down at Coral Gables at the University of
Yes.
Miami. We
Absolutely.
were able to talk to her the other day for
Yes.
did an interview for the project.
Well, it's really fun because here in Florida, we have 12 law schools. I know,
Yeah.
that's a bit, but
Lamar
Yes.
Woodard mentioned that there were like 4 when he came
Yes.
here, and
And
there
now
are 12
there are
now.
12.
Yeah.
But all of us, all of the law library directors at the law schools get together twice a year. We just exchange ideas, we talk to each other, we have actually some very, very neat group projects that started back in Lamar's day and continue. For example, the Florida opinions and briefs are online. They started as microfiche that
All right.
all of the 4 libraries paid a little bit, and it all went to Florida State University, FSU, who did the microfilming or microfiching. And then come along the internet and the digital age, they are now putting them all online. They're all digitized and free. And all of our schools contribute to this process. And in fact, we've got another really cool process underway. We're doing what we're calling a union list of Florida print publications that we're going to share among all of the 12 libraries to kind of see who's got what and to make sure that there's at least some place in the state where you can get, back to the beginning of time, if you will. So anyway, I went to the University of Nebraska as the associate director, which I thought was fabulous. Again, meeting lots of great people, getting lots of help, especially enjoying learning a lot from Sally Weiss. But I wanted to be a law library director. Of course I did. And so when my next position was as a law library director at what is now Barry University School of Law in Orlando. So off I go. And I recognized that this was it was a new startup school. It was not accredited, but I really wanted to try. And so I loved that job because I got to start a law library from scratch. We had a brand new building with shelving and tables and furniture and about 2 ranges of books, and that was it. That was it.
And you had an interesting job to do.
Did I?
And in a hurry, I'll bet.
Yes, because I really had perhaps maybe a month or so to pull it together.
Yeah.
And I was at Barry for about 6.5 years. During that time, while they were seeking accreditation, we had 5 different site visits.
Oh.
Yeah,
How exhausting.
It was. But I can tell you, I sure learned a lot about site visits. 4 of them were from the ABA, and 1 of them was from SACS, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. So I really did learn what site visits are all about. And when I left Barry, they were provisionally accredited.
Good.
From Barry, yes, I thought so
You
too.
must be an expert on doing self-studies and things.
I am.
Because all those require a different one each time, I think.
They did,
Yeah.
and I got pretty good at it.
Uh-huh.
From Barry, I went to the University of Kentucky in Lexington,
Okay.
and I was there. I really enjoyed Kentucky. It was interesting. It was different. Now, at that time, the Kentucky Law Library was under the direction of the Maine University Library. It was not an autonomous law library.
Yeah.
At that time, it was one of the 8 schools in the country that did not have an autonomous law library.
All right.
And when I took the job, I thought, okay, I can deal with this because the law library director, the dean of libraries for the entire University of Kentucky, was the former law library director and on the law faculty. And I thought, okay, because we had a memo of understanding that basically gave the law library the autonomy that I thought it needed and so forth and so on. And we were doing quite well. 3 months after I got there, he left. He went to the University of South Carolina to be their dean of libraries. And I thought, dear heaven, just because your grandkids are there, and just because you're building a retirement home there is no reason for you to leave the University of Kentucky. But he did. And then eventually they hired a new dean of libraries. And eventually I decided that, and I made no bones about it, that I did not think that the lack of autonomy for the law library was a good thing, and that I really didn't find that I wanted to stay. And I got fortunate, and Stetson opened, and here I am, back in Florida, which I love, and at what is actually my 5th law school. But I have learned so much and seen so many different ways of doing great things in the 5 different schools that I've been at, and met fabulous people that I still consider friends and mentors along the way.
I think that is the theme I've heard throughout many of these interviews, is the wonderful people that I've met, whoever the I is who's doing the interview, being interviewed.
Exactly.
It's universal. We've got wonderful colleagues and others in sort of broader colleagues as well.
And we do. And I love telling new folks that come into the profession, because we're hiring new librarians. It's actually a great circle. And I love telling them that this is a very small community. Occasionally I tell them the truth, it's a small incestuous community. And that they will build friends, they will build reputations, and that this is just a wonderful type of work to do.
Let me tell a story out of school somewhat to our viewers. These interviews, we try and make conversational and will appear to be almost, just done on the fly, but we do talk in advance about some of the things we might discuss. And just earlier today, several of us, yourself and myself included, went to lunch. And you were sharing with our group a little bit about your other role. We've talked about the library, but you also are responsible for all the high-tech sorts of things in the law school as well. And you were sharing some things about that. And could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, don't tell everything you told us at lunch, perhaps, but share a little of some of the challenges that you have had, because Stetson is basically a standalone place. And so you, involved in both the library and the non-library part of the technology, have had to deal, you said at lunch, with things that one would normally not think of, such as the telephone system.
That's true. That's true. I am fortunate, I think, that because we are a standalone, basically. We are part of a larger university that is housed 150 miles away in DeLand, Florida. So it's over on the East Coast and we're the West Coast. And because of that, we have to do our own IT here. That means we have to run our own phones. We've had to work on our own T1 lines or internet connections or whatever we're using. And we also have to be able to support the different kinds of technology that you have at any school that frequently are done by the main university. In Kentucky, the main university handled Blackboard, our course management system. The main university handled the phones. They handled all it. Well, here we do them all. And so, fortunately, I have a partnership with IT, so I don't have to do everything. But I do, when I got here, I realized how important it was to have a solid working relationship with IT. And so I meet with them every week so that we can make sure that the library is getting the kind of resources and the kind of information support that we need to accomplish what we're doing. And so that they don't decide to change like the firewall codes overnight and then I can't get my databases the next day. So we have this great relationship. But it's so complicated today. There's so much new technology that you need a shared environment. And I think we've got a great one here. I'm really pleased with us. But I have a piece of the environment that is under my direction working with IT again, and that's the electronic education.
Mhm.
Because we offer here at Stetson both online JD courses, and we also have an online LLM in elder law, and we're starting an online LLM in advocacy in the fall.
Mhm.
And so my responsibility is to make sure that all of this works well and easily and smoothly.
Mhm.
And then I have a day job in the library.
Day job in the
Yeah,
library.
day job in the library.
Well, you also have sort of a branch over in Tampa,
Oh,
which
dear
isn't
heaven.
terribly far, but it's not exactly across the street either.
No, it isn't. It isn't. No, we have the Tampa Law Center,
Yes.
and we have a satellite library there.
Uh-huh.
Now, that might, and it is just over, I think it's 22 or 23 miles away. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but do you know, it took me probably the better part of a year here
Mhm.
before I realized that in whatever decision making we did and whatever sort of things that we did, I had to remember there was Tampa.
Mhm.
It took me that long to remember. Now we try to make everything that we do here use basically the same schedule,
Mhm.
basically the same hours, basically the same everything, and because I've tried many different approaches, we rotate our staff into Tampa, to the Tampa Law Center on a regular basis. And by
Mhm.
that I mean that we have at least one staff person or librarian that goes over Monday through Thursday every morning.
Mhm.
And then a librarian that goes over in the afternoon and staffs until 10 at night.
Mhm.
And I do Thursday nights.
Oh,
So
one of the troops yourself.
yes, I am a
Mhm.
troop.
Yep.
Or a trooper, I don't know,
I don't
whatever.
know.
But yes, I do the Thursday night shift. Most of the classes that we offer in Tampa are late afternoon or evening.
Okay.
But it shouldn't be considered just the part-time program, because it's not. Any class that meets in Tampa will also meet at least once on this campus every week. So depending on the number of credits, like a 2 credit could meet 1 hour here, 1 hour in Tampa. 3 credit might do 2 hours in Tampa, 1 hour here, or vice versa. The idea being that it's one entity, one law school.
Mhm.
But we have a satellite library. I have staff that are assigned primarily to Tampa, but they have to come here at least 1 day a week. And we have staff meetings that take everybody from both locations.
Sounds like you are very conscientious of the need to basically have the program be a program and not two programs.
That is correct.
Yes.
That is exactly right. Because, and it took me really about a year to figure out, wait a minute, this doesn't work. The Dolly and Homer Hand Law Library here in Gulfport is really, we think of it as the mothership. It has, the bulk of our print materials are here.
Mhm.
We have excellent online resources that are available wherever you have an internet connection. But the bulk of the print is here. And I want anyone that's working in Tampa to know what we have here.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know what we have and what's available, how can they help people there?
Yeah.
And we actually do get a lot of alumni and members of the practicing bar at the Tampa Law Center,
Mhm.
because it not only houses us, and it is owned by the College of Law, but the Florida's Second District Court of Appeals rents space. They in fact rent the entire 3rd floor, and there's a very, very nice courtroom on the 1st floor. It's the Reese Smith courtroom that the 2nd DCA uses for their appellate cases. And so we share that facility. So we get members of the practicing bar, we get our alumni.
Mhm.
And I think it's a great way to let attorneys who I hope will hire our graduates see how good they are and what they can do.
That's important. Now, you've been speaking, and we've both been talking a little bit about Tampa and here in Gulfport being the two sites. For benefit of those of us who are a little challenged on geography, and I understand that's a lot of people in this country,
Yeah, I've heard that too.
about how far apart are they in terms of driving time, would you say?
I would say from here to Tampa, because of traffic, and it depends on the time of day, that It's probably going to be 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay. So that gives the perspective
Yeah.
of what it means to go from one to the other, I
Right.
think, to our viewers.
Yeah, it's about 30 to 40 minutes. We are in, the Dolly and Homer Hand Law Library has a Gulfport, Florida address.
Yes.
I always explain to people that's really South Tampa, South St. Petersburg, I'm sorry. It's the south side of St. Petersburg. So you get Gulfport, then you get St. Petersburg, then you get this bridge. And about a third of the way across, it becomes Tampa. It becomes another county. So you've got Tampa, St. Pete, and then south side of St. Pete is Gulfport, which is where this library is.
Good. So about a little over a half hour.
Yeah, about 30 to 40 minutes.
Sort of like across town in some cities.
Yes, I'm afraid you're absolutely
Yeah.
right on that one.
Can I sort of move us on? You've done some stuff for the association and for the profession. And I noticed currently that you're serving as chair of the Standing Committee on Law Library Service to Institutionalized Persons. I remember a colleague up in Maryland
Yes.
who was very much into that kind of thing years ago, and
Yes.
probably still is.
I expect so.
Could you talk a little bit about that kind of work and maybe anything else that
Sure.
you would like to mention about
Sure.
some of the stuff you've done on the kind of the outside of the law school?
outside of the law school.
Yeah.
Well, basically, I had I continue to have an interest in this area. And I think it's something that as law librarians, we have the opportunity to contribute to assist inmates, institutions. Basically, most of the work is prisoners. And most of it involves getting prisoner mail. As the chair of this particular SIS subgroup, I get prisoner mail all the time. Got a piece in the mail this morning. And what we do is open it, read it, and try to send some sort of appropriate response, suggesting other sources for the information that the person needs, this sort of thing. We can't fill all prisoner requests because basically, well, you've been doing this long enough to have gotten those letters too.
I remember seeing them,
You
yes.
bet you have.
There are a lot of people who are incarcerated, unfortunately.
Yes, there are.
And they have plenty of time to think about how can I get myself out.
That is
And that's
correct.
reasonable, I guess.
It is. And this has changed so much over the years, this particular area. I think it was about 2006, I did the Warner's Manual for Prison Law Librarians, or law libraries. I updated that. Arturo Flores had done the Warner had done the first iteration of this probably about 20 years ago. Arturo Flores updated the second, and I did the third edition. And at that time, it provided a lot of information because we were not as much an online legal information community as we are today. And so I did an update, talked about online resources and that sort of thing. And some of the things that this particular group has done is to create a list of recommended materials for prison and jail law libraries. Also to do a list, and now it is available online, of places that will provide, for example, make photocopies or other information for prisoners. And how much they charge to do this.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things that this group has done. And answering prisoner mail is pretty much what we're doing now, plus trying to respond to any queries or questions from prison law librarians, or from, sometimes it's correctional officers or individuals that are staffing these facilities. But there's been so much change in the law when we moved from the Bounds decision, U.S. Supreme Court decision, that said that prisons required law libraries to assist prisoners, or they had to provide legal assistance. And most of the institutions went with the law libraries. They thought that was cheaper.
Yeah.
And there's a body of case law that goes with this until you got to the Casey v. Lewis decision, which basically said, another U.S. Supreme Court decision, that basically said, no, you don't need to do that anymore. And the result has been just kind of a limbo sort of situation. And so we respond to prisoner letters. I will admit it, they're form responses that I use depending on what the letters
Well,
ask
certainly, yeah.
I could not possibly do individual letters for all of the mail that comes in.
I remember many years ago, I was at a state law library, a state school, actually, a law school, and we did get a lot of inquiries in those days, not just from our own penal system, but from, if the word got out that we helped somebody, the word got out and we got all sorts of more.
Oh my gosh, yes, you'd get them from, all 50 states, and I swear the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Seriously, so that, and at one point, AALL was much more supportive of this than it is now. And I do think that's too bad.
Yeah.
That we should do better. And I have been doing this for a terribly long time. And so I'm working with some members of the committee and so forth to see if someone else would like to do this. So I think we're going to transition at this year's AALL meeting, because it's really time for me to step down and for someone else to take over with new ideas, maybe more enthusiasm.
And maybe you to try something else.
Yes.
There's plenty of needs out there, as I recall, and
there are.
They're all interesting to be part of.
They are, and I see so much need for law libraries to move forward and change and sort of look at different ways of doing things. One of the things that we are doing here that other law libraries are doing, I'm not saying that it's unique, but we are really integrating the folks that have been called technical services staff and the folks that have been called, say, circulation or public services staff. We're really integrating them into one team with cross-training and sharing of duties. And I really see that as the direction that we need to go to.
Yeah, we did some of that in the years I was director at American, and it made both of the so-called two sides of the library really appreciate each other and the contributions that were made by all in different ways and how they interrelated. And
I agree, and I think it's essential that they see that connection, because I think it's sometimes without that it's hard for them to see, and you can get. I'm very fortunate, I think, in all of the law libraries that I've worked at, that we really haven't had that sort of back and forth between public services and technical services, that we've had a fairly good team. But I think we need it more and more.
Yeah. It gives the people who in more traditional back office jobs contact with the students and others, which I think most of them find they like.
They do. It's they like helping people. They really do.
And getting to know some of them sort of in a sense.
Well, we have two notaries in the law library here, and both of them are in technical services. And so that's another way that they get to know the students and that sort of thing.
That's right. There's a lot of stuff that the students, especially as they start to get into their third year and have to have certain applications and notarized.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Where's the notary?
Where's the notary? And the law library has people that are here late in the evening.
Yes.
And one of them is a notary. So it's really very, very good.
Well, on that, I want to thank you, Rebecca, for taking these few minutes to talk with us today. And as is sort of the custom, I want to give you the opportunity, if there's anything that we've not discussed that you would like to mention at this point before we conclude.
I think the one thing, and we've touched on it, which is technology. And I think that as law librarians, that we have a great deal to offer to the entire law school in terms of ways to approach technology, the kind of resources that we have that we can make available. I really think we have the opportunity to play a very significant role in legal education. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of think that we are not advocating for ourselves in the way that we should. I got my library degree before I went to law school. Then I went to law school. And I'm actually I'm working on a PhD in educational technology. I'm ABD, all but dissertation.
So you have the really hard part still ahead.
This is so hard. It is. But the reason I'm even bringing that up is that I'm focusing on what kind of legal research we are teaching and how we are teaching it. And in the process, I'm seeing that, in my opinion, it's just in my opinion, that we have not advocated as well. And I know there are things like the Boulder group that are looking at trying to develop a pedagogy for legal research, instruction. But I just don't see that law librarians have taken as much of a lead in this area as we should. I'd like to see us do more.
I would think it would be sort of a natural for us. I mean,
Yes.
over the years, I've seen
Yes.
so many of our colleagues who at least teach in that field.
Yes. But we don't seem to write in that field as much. If you look at, and I think that Barbara Bentleff, who is somebody that, while I never got a chance to work for her, was at Colorado University, and because I still call Denver home, and so I would stop and visit with her. She's written in this area, but what we see is that our legal writing colleagues, who are characterized as teaching legal research and legal writing, or R&W, research and writing, are really teaching writing, have really advocated for themselves, have done a great job with this, and I give them all due respect for this. But we all know, if we look at this realistically, that they're great at instructing for writing and not so much on the research side. And that's the role that we really need to step up to the plate and fill.
Years ago, in at least some libraries, including one I happened to work at for a while, which I will not mention.
That's all right.
In order to save some wear and tear on the collection, in some of those assignments, the focus was primarily on writing and rewriting, and the students were given somewhat a lot of the basic materials on which to build their papers. But you're right. I mean, we would have students who came back from, say, clerking in New York City during the summer before whatever year, and they were in Panicsville because they didn't know how to do things and find the basic stuff, and the professor wasn't handing it to them.
That's right.
They could do a wonderful job of articulating what the information meant, but they didn't know exactly how to get it on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we'd try and educate them.
Yes.
The library did.
And that's what we do. But I think we need to be more proactive in that direction.
Uh-huh.
I know also, it's even more important today because we are moving away from print and into online. And there are so many new free online sources out there that we need to introduce our students and our alums to. I know that Stetson has a solo practice institute that they do, and the law library puts together little recordings of how to use different kinds of tools, but we also have an annotated list of topically arranged legal resources that solo practitioners, attorneys, anybody can use. There's so much that all of us can do, and I really think that we need to keep moving forward.
Good. Well, I think on sort of that, if I can suggest, it's been wonderful talking to you today.
Well,
I said you were going to get the last word, but I always butt in at the end, and I want to thank you for joining us, and also for hosting us, because we've done 2 other interviews here today. And you're here in the library, and it's been wonderful. You've been a good hostess. You helped us select where we all went to lunch a little while ago, and where I learned a few things to interject a few moments ago in this interview. It's been a very nice experience. And thank you for having me and having us visit with you this afternoon.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank
I've
you.
enjoyed doing this. Thank you so much.
All right.